My name's Jason, and I'm the biology teacher here at the EPTS program at Satik Patunwan Demonstration School. Sometimes when you teach biology, you'll notice that the students are not so interested for any reason. Maybe they're very busy, or maybe they just get tired of learning biology and body systems all the time. So the question is what can we do to help maintain their interest and still be useful for them while staying relevant on topic? One of the best ways that I do that is to try to add in an extra lesson, and there's two main goals that it serves. One, it helps them with some critical thinking skills, and two, it helps them reinforce the things they've already learned. So let's take a look at two of the assignments that I've provided for M6 and N5. For M6 recently, we started studying the brain, and I opened the topic by showing them some statements that they may have heard of before in their lifetimes about the brain, and their job is to research it and have a discussion with the class whether it's a true statement or maybe it's something that was fabricated. So for example, is there a left brain or a right brain? You may have learned that on the left brain, you're more analytical, and if you're a right brain person, then it's much more creative. And people usually get assigned to either being left brain dominant or right brain dominant. So they get to research online, see if they can come up with some facts, and then teach the rest of the class about those types of myths. Let's take a look at see what M5 had to do for us. Could you introduce the game you chose for this assignment?
The game we worked on is called ROV, which stands for Realm of Valor. Each player controls a hero, and the objective of the game is to destroy the core. And there are like 5 players on each team, and we get stronger by killing players, monsters, and towers.
Could you introduce the game you worked on for this assignment?
Okay, so the cookie run is about the cookie escaping the oven. So you run as far as you can and collecting jellies to gain like as high points as you can to compete with others.
Could you explain what classical conditioning is and to give an example from your game?
Classical conditioning is a learning process where we associate neutral stimuli with past experience or things we already knew. And the example from the game is we see red bars and like invokes hostile intents. So the neutral stimuli is the characters with the red bars, and the past experience we have is red symbolizes aggression and opposition. So when we see the characters, we gotta kill them.
Could you give an example of classical conditioning in your game?
Yep. So before conditioning is like the gingerbread man is very like notable amongst people in Thailand, and the logos of cookie runs. Most people didn't familiar with the logo, so during the conditioning or after the conditioning, when the lines put the logos and the gingerbread man together, it's made the cookie runs more notable and memorable.
Could you give us an example of positive reinforcement in your game?
Yeah, so positive reinforcement is when we give the subject stimulus so that they would be encouraged to do a certain activity over again. And the example in this game is the daily login page. So if the player log into the game every day, they will get continuous rewards like special items, coins, or money, like something like that. So basically, they encourage the players to log into the game.
Yeah, an example of positive reinforcement would be when the player finishes a race in the most popular mode of the game, they will earn gold tickets which can be exchanged for prizes and rewards in the treasure chest. And the important thing is that the better they perform in the race, on the leaderboard ranking, the more gold tickets they will earn. So the motivator is that by earning high scores, you will get lots of tickets and you will get lots of rewards as a result.
Could you explain what negative reinforcement is and give us an example from your game?
Negative reinforcement is when you take something from the subject but the thing that you take will encourage your subject to do the behavior again. In this game, well, if you play the game a lot and you win the game, your rank will go up. And then when your rank goes up, the game will remove your experience of having to have poor players into your team. In other words, they remove your chances of losing.
Could you give us an example of negative reinforcement from the game?
So the main example for negative reinforcement is the power-ups. So when the player collect power-ups, the game removes the obstacle and the hardness of the game by enhancing the cookie's power, such as the giant giant power-ups. So when player collect it, they can run into the obstacle without having their health reduced.
Could you explain what positive punishment is and give us an example of it in your game?
Positive punishment is when you give your subject something that will discourage the subject from repeating the same activity. An example in this game is that when players play in a team and they kind of don't contribute to the game, or they leave the game in the middle, the system will give the player warnings. And there's this thing called the player score. So if you get warnings, your score will lower, and if the score reaches a certain point, the player will be banned from the game for around 2 weeks.
Sure. One of the most obvious examples of positive punishment in this game is when the cookies run into an obstacle, the screen will flash red and the players will see sad facial expressions of the cookies. So this informs them not to hit the obstacles next time, as the screen will not flash red and the cookie will just keep on running and the game will go on.
Okay. Could you tell me what you learned about biology in this assignment?
This assignment about animal behavior is the baseline of understanding animals and why we do stuff. So we can base biology on this assignment.
Okay. Could you tell us what you learned about biology in this assignment?
So this assignment is part of the biology unit called animal behavior. So conditioning is certainly a method in which both humans and animals learn new information. But also I think this topic is very important because as consumers we should be aware of how advertisers and developers are using these conditioning strategies to influence or manipulate us.
What did you learn about mobile phone game developers and the companies they work for and what their goals are?
I think they want to increase the player base and also to get money from the players. They do that by including classical and operant conditioning. And I think why we learn this is because we don't want to get addicted to the game too much and to know what the company is thinking. So we don't spend too much money on it and too much time on the game.
Okay.
So this assignment is part of the biology unit called animal behavior. So conditioning is certainly a method in which both humans and animals learn new information. But also I think this topic is very important because as consumers we should be aware of how advertisers and developers are using these conditioning strategies to influence or manipulate us.
So, did you see what M5 had to do and the extra lesson they had to learn? Do note that we still stayed on topic where they still had to learn about animal behavior, but they got this extra lesson where they get to learn how companies might try to manipulate the ways they present their products in order to get the consumer to do something that would be good for them. So there's always this great feeling of self-fulfillment whenever you learn something new. And even though that the lesson on companies wasn't exactly biology, it was something useful for them and it could help their lives in the future. So hopefully that makes them happy. So how about you? You watched this video in order to see what I had to share about teaching methods. Have you learned anything from N5?